There is a factory floor somewhere in the Saharan foothills, coordinates withheld, perimeter fenced with concertina wire, where technicians in olive drab are assembling components for something called the El Jazair 55. It is an unmanned aerial vehicle. It is Algerian designed, and 5 years ago, it did not exist. That detail matters because the country building this drone is not the Algeria most people picture, not the Algeria of the 1990s civil war, not the Algeria of creaking Soviet surplus, not the quiet oil state that bought Russian hardware in bulk and hoped it would never have to use it. The Algeria assembling indigenous surveillance drones in 2026 is something else entirely. It is the second most powerful military in Africa, the largest defense spender on the continent by a factor that borders on absurd. And as of late 2025, it became the first country on Earth, outside of Russia itself, to operate a fifth-generation stealth fighter. Let that settle for a moment. Algeria, not India, not China, not Turkey or Egypt or Saudi Arabia. Algeria, a country of 46 million people, wedged between the Mediterranean and the Sahara, spending 1 in every 5 dinars of public money on its armed forces, was the nation that took delivery of Russia's Su-57 Felon before anyone else. And the way it happened tells you everything about the kind of military power Algeria is building, and the contradictions buried inside it. To understand Algeria's military, you have to understand its geography, and its geography is enormous. Algeria is the largest country in Africa, 2.4 million square kilometers. To put that in perspective, it is roughly 10 times the size of the United Kingdom. Its land borders stretch across 6,000 kilometers, touching 7 different nations: Tunisia, Libya, Niger, Mali, Mauritania, Morocco, and the disputed territory of Western Sahara. To the north, nearly 1,200 kilometers of Mediterranean coastline face directly toward southern Europe. Now, most of that territory is desert. The Sahara covers more than 80% of the country, but that desert is not empty. It contains some of the most significant hydrocarbon reserves on the continent, and it shares borders with some of the most unstable regions on the planet. The Sahel, that band of semi-arid chaos stretching across sub-Saharan Africa, presses directly against Algeria's southern frontier. Jihadist insurgencies, military coups, arms trafficking, drug smuggling, irregular migration, all of it flowing north toward Algeria's border. And to the west, Morocco. We'll get to Morocco. The point is this: Algeria does not have the luxury of ignoring its neighborhood. Every kilometer of that 6,000-kilometer border is a potential vulnerability. And the Algerian military, formerly the People's National Army, the ANP, was built from its very foundation around a single organizing principle: defend the territory. No expeditionary ambitions, no overseas bases, no power projection for its own sake. Just a massive, heavily armed, inward-facing fortress designed to ensure that what happened during the colonial period, 132 years of French occupation, ended only by an 8-year war of independence that killed over 1 million Algerians, never, ever happens again. That history is not decoration, it is the operating system. So what does $25 billion a year actually buy? Let's start with the numbers, because the numbers are staggering. Algeria's defense budget for 2026 stands at approximately $25 billion US. That is not a typo. 25 billion. It matches the record set in 2025 and represents nearly 20% of total national spending, roughly 1/5 of every government dinar. For context, that is almost double Morocco's $13.4 billion defense budget. It dwarfs Tunisia's $1.4 billion. It exceeds the military spending of most European NATO members. According to Bloomberg, defense spending has surged by 16% year-on-year, driven in large part by the windfall from European gas demand following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Algeria's hydrocarbon exports generated over $45 billion in 2024 alone, over 90% of total export revenue, and a significant chunk of that cash has been funneled directly into military modernization. The result is a force of genuine scale: 326,000 active duty personnel, the largest standing military in the Maghreb, 150,000 reservists, nearly 200,000 paramilitary forces. Rank that globally, and you are looking at one of the 25 most powerful militaries on Earth. But raw headcount only tells part of the story. The equipment list is where it gets interesting. On the ground, Algeria operates approximately 1,485 main battle tanks. The backbone of the fleet is the T-90SA, a purpose-built export variant of Russia's T-90, delivered in significant numbers from 2006 onward. These are supported by older T-72 variants and legacy T-62s that remain in reserve stocks. Alongside them sit BMP-2 and BMP-3 infantry fighting vehicles, BTR-80 armored personnel carriers, and here is where the eyebrows go up, Iskander-E tactical ballistic missile systems. If you're still here, you're my kind of viewer. Subscribe, hit the bell, leave a comment, even just the flag of your country. It helps more than you think. Now, yes, Algeria has the Iskander. 4 regiments were delivered between 2014 and 2017, each comprising approximately 50 vehicles, including 12 launchers, 12 missile carriers, and 11 command vehicles. The Iskander-E is the export variant, capped at a range of 280 kilometers to comply with international arms control agreements, but it delivers devastating accuracy, a circular error probable of just 5 to 7 meters. Algeria publicly displayed the system for the first time during its November 2024 military parade, commemorating the 70th anniversary of the War of Independence. That public display was not accidental. It was a message, subtle as a ballistic missile, you might say. The army also fields TOS-1A thermobaric rocket launchers, the same system Russia has used to devastating effect in Ukraine, along with self-propelled artillery from Serbia and a growing fleet of Chinese and Turkish medium-altitude, long-endurance drones for border surveillance. In the air, this is where Algeria has made its most dramatic leap. The Algerian Air Force operates 611 military aircraft, 156 of them combat platforms. The core of the fleet has long been the Su-30MKA, a multi-role fighter based on the Indian Su-30MKI, equipped with the N011 MBARS phased array radar. These are Algeria's workhorses, capable, versatile, and battle-proven in concept, if not in Algerian service. But the fleet is in the middle of a generational transition. In March 2025, the first Su-35 air superiority fighters began arriving from Russia, a significant upgrade in maneuverability, radar capability, and electronic warfare. MiG-29 M/M2 interceptors fill the lighter end of the spectrum, while Yak-130 advanced jet trainers prepare the next generation of pilots. And then there is the Felon, the Su-57E. In late 2025, Russia's United Aircraft Corporation confirmed that 2 Su-57E fighters had been delivered to an unnamed foreign customer. The CEO, Vadim Badeka, stated that the aircraft have entered combat duty and are demonstrating their best qualities. He did not name the country. He did not need to. In February 2026, a TikTok video, recorded improbably by an Algerian potato farmer near El Bouaghi Air Base, captured the distinctive silhouette of a Su-57 against the North African sky. The howling whistle of the AL-41 F1 engines was unmistakable. Subsequent footage confirmed sustained flight operations, including what appeared to be familiarization sorties and systems integration testing alongside Su-35s. A potato farmer confirmed what the Pentagon couldn't. Leaked documents from Russian state conglomerate Rostec, obtained through a cyber attack by the hacker collective Black Mirror in October 2025, outline the full scope of the deal. 12 Su-57E stealth fighters, with phased deliveries of 2 aircraft in 2025, 6 in 2026, and 4 in 2028. The total contract value was widely reported as approximately $2 billion for 14 airframes. Alongside the Su-57s, Algeria is also receiving a squadron of Su-34ME strike fighters and additional Su-35s. This makes Algeria the first country outside Russia to operate a 5th-generation fighter that is not the American F-35. The first in Africa, the first in the Arab world, the first among Muslim-majority nations, and it has not gone unnoticed. Robert Palladino, head of the U.S. State Department's Bureau of Near Eastern Affairs, told the Senate Foreign Relations Committee in February 2026 that Algeria's acquisition of the Su-57 is concerning and may trigger sanctions under the Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act, CAATSA, the same legislation that has hung over every Russian arms deal since 2017. Because nothing says strategic autonomy quite like buying a stealth fighter that might get you sanctioned by the world's largest economy. At sea, Algeria maintains a modest but growing navy, 104 vessels, including 6 Kilo-class submarines. These are Project 636 boats, the improved version of the classic Soviet diesel-electric design, equipped with Kalibr cruise missiles capable of both anti-ship and land attack missions. On the surface, MEKO A200 frigates from Germany provide the most modern capability, supplemented by Chinese-built C-28A corvettes, armed with C-802 anti-ship missiles. The naval doctrine is not power projection, it is denial. Algeria's navy exists to control the Western Mediterranean approaches, protect the coastline, and ensure that no hostile force can threaten the country's critical energy export infrastructure, the LNG terminals at Arzu and Skikda, the Medgaz pipeline running directly to Spain. Now, step back and look at the strategic picture, because the hardware only makes sense in context. Algeria's military is shaped by 3 overlapping anxieties. The first is the Sahel. The southern border has been a festering security challenge for over a decade. Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso all have experienced military coups. Jihadist groups including JNIM and ISIS Sahel are gaining ground. And in April 2025, Algeria shot down a Malian military drone near the border town of Tinzaouatine, an incident that triggered a diplomatic crisis. Mali accused Algeria of blatant hostility. Algeria said the drone had taken an offensive trajectory into its airspace. Ambassadors were recalled, airspace was closed. Mali took the case to the International Court of Justice and accused Algeria of sponsoring international terrorism. The fallout was severe. Mali's allies in the Confederation of Sahel States, Niger and Burkina Faso, recalled their ambassadors from Algiers. Intelligence sharing across the border effectively ceased. The very cooperation framework that was supposed to contain jihadist threats collapsed. As we covered in our earlier video on Turkey's expanding military footprint, Turkish drone exports have reshaped the military balance across Africa. The drone Algeria shot down was Turkish-supplied, an Anka S-class platform sold to Mali's junta. The irony is palpable. Algeria, the continent's biggest Russian arms buyer, downing a Turkish-made drone operated by a Russian-backed military government. The second anxiety is Libya. Algeria's eastern neighbor remains fractured, with competing governments, foreign mercenaries, and arms flows that leak across porous borders. Khalifa Haftar's erratic troop movements along the Algerian frontier have added another layer of uncertainty. And the third, the deepest, the most structural, is Morocco. The Algeria-Morocco rivalry is one of the defining fault lines of North African geopolitics. It is rooted in colonial-era border disputes, hardened by the Western Sahara conflict, and sustained by opposing visions of the region's future. The basic architecture: Morocco claims sovereignty over Western Sahara. Algeria supports the Polisario Front's demand for Sahrawi self-determination. The land border between the two countries has been closed since 1994. Diplomatic relations were severed by Algeria in August 2021. Morocco's foreign minister warned in November 2024 that Algeria is seeking escalation and shows signs of a will to start a war. The arms race is real. Morocco has allocated $13 billion for defense in 2025, pursuing American F-35 stealth fighters, upgrading its F-16 fleet, and acquiring HIMARS precision strike systems. Its partnership with Israel, formalized through the Abraham Accords in 2020, in exchange for U.S. recognition of Moroccan sovereignty over Western Sahara, provides technological advantages and intelligence capabilities that Algeria simply cannot match through its Russian and Chinese suppliers. Algeria's response has been to spend its way to superiority, $25 billion to Morocco's $13. The Su-57 acquisition is, in part, a direct answer to Morocco's pursuit of the F-35. The Iskander-E deployments are a counter to HIMARS. The submarine fleet is designed to dominate the Western Mediterranean in the event that tensions escalate beyond diplomacy. In October 2025, the UN Security Council adopted Resolution 2797, one of the most consequential texts on Western Sahara since the dispute began. It endorsed Morocco's autonomy initiative as the serious, credible, and realistic basis for settlement, and, crucially, named Algeria as a direct party to the dispute, not an observer, not a concerned neighbor, a party. For a country whose entire military identity is built around defending sovereignty and self-determination, that designation lands like a body blow. And here is the contradiction at the heart of Algeria's military power, the puzzle that makes this story worth telling. Algeria spends more on defense than any country in Africa. It fields Russian stealth fighters, tactical ballistic missiles, submarine-launched cruise missiles, thermobaric rocket launchers, and an army large enough to fight a major regional war. It is, by any quantitative measure, an enormously powerful military. But it is a military that has never fought a conventional war since independence. It is a military whose budget depends almost entirely on hydrocarbon revenues. Over 90% of export income comes from oil and gas, at a time when global energy markets are volatile and Europe is actively diversifying away from fossil fuels. It is a military that has just lost influence across the Sahel, seen its diplomatic relationships with its southern neighbors collapse, and watched Morocco steadily win the international argument over Western Sahara. The $25 billion question is not whether Algeria's military is powerful. It demonstrably is. The question is whether that power is convertible, whether it can be translated into the kind of strategic influence that actually shapes outcomes. Because right now, Algeria is spending a fortune on hardware, while its diplomatic position erodes, its Sahel partnerships crumble, and its regional rival builds alliances with Washington, Tel Aviv, and half of Europe. As we explored in our video on Russia's economy and the Hormuz windfall, there is a particular vulnerability that comes with military power built on a single revenue stream. When the oil price drops, and it always drops eventually, the $25 billion becomes 15, and the Su-57s still need spare parts from a Russian defense industry that is stretched thin by its own war.
There is a photograph taken during Algeria's November 2024 military parade that captures this tension perfectly. In the foreground, an Iskander-E launcher rolls past the reviewing stand, its twin missile canisters angled toward the sky. Behind it, rows of T-90SA tanks. Overhead, Su-30 MKAs in formation. It is an image of undeniable strength, the largest military parade Algeria had held in decades. But the parade route runs through Algiers, a city where 23% of the population lives below the poverty line, where youth unemployment hovers above 12%, where the health budget is $6 billion and the education budget is 11, where 1 in 5 dinars goes to the military, and the other 4 are supposed to cover everything else. The Iskander can hit a target 280 kilometers away with 5-meter accuracy, but it cannot diversify an economy. The Su-57 can evade radar, but it cannot buy diplomatic recognition. The 6-kilo class submarines can deny passage through the Western Mediterranean, but they cannot reopen a border that has been closed for 32 years. Algeria's military is insanely powerful. The question, the one that will define North Africa for the next decade, is whether power alone is enough.